Hi, my name is Jordanknowmoore, and this is A Closer Look. In the 10 years I've been a photographer, I've been fortunate to experience all sorts of cameras and own most of the brands on the market, except for one. And earlier this year, I decided it was time. Obviously, this camera isn't for everyone, but after using it for 2 months, I feel like I can provide some insights as to exactly the type of photographer it's for. So let's take a look at the Leica Q2's features at a glance. First and foremost, it has a 47.3 megapixel sensor. That's absolutely massive for technically a point-and-shoot camera. It comes equipped with a fixed 28mm 1.7 Similux lens. In fact, the camera lens combo should technically cost more than the price of the camera, which is a major thing to consider when getting into Leica cameras. With the battery, the Leica Q2 weighs about 25.3 ounces, which is pretty light, but not too light to feel cheap and not too heavy to be cumbersome when you're shooting. Its compact size and minimalist design is fantastic for shooting. So in the time since I got the Leica Q2, it has pretty much been my everyday carry. And I was able to put it through its paces in a variety of use cases, including portrait photography, street photography, and even event photography. All of which were actual paid gigs, so there were real-world consequences and time constraints and client expectations to manage. The thing I do most in photography is portrait photography. And that's the thing I was most excited to try with the Leica Q2. Assuming most shoots are for digital publication and not print, the 28mm coupled with the 47.3 megapixel sensor is more than enough to do the job. One of the great things that I've never seen in any other camera is this crop mode feature. All of the crop modes make it quick and easy to switch lenses digitally, and your crop is reflected in Lightroom. But it isn't the permanent crop in case you want to make adjustments in post. The trigger feedback is quiet enough to not be distracted for events and BTS photography, but loud enough that your model will know you've taken a shot, which is helpful for switching poses. Having all of the settings adjustable using manual buttons and dials makes for a more tactile and efficient experience, especially once you get to know the camera better. You can literally make blind changes. Case in point, I was shooting a live concert during strobing lights and wrestling with the crowd of a mosh pit, and I did just fine switching the settings. The color science of the Leica Q2 is absolutely unmatched. I brought the Leica Q2 alongside my Sony a7R III to shoot behind-the-scenes photography for a yoga studio. And comparing the images side to side, I was able to match them, but it was so much easier to get a baseline with the Leica Q2 versus the Sony a7R III. Now let's talk about some cons, because no camera is perfect. Like every camera, the Leica Q2 is far from perfect. In fact, if you go into it assuming it's a catch-all camera, you'll probably be disappointed. It was designed with street and travel photography in mind, and in those areas, it performs the best. But unfortunately, in real-world scenarios, it has proven difficult to depend on the autofocus. I'm not a big fan of autofocus in general, as I come from the film photography world, and I believe my eye is far superior to autofocus. That being said, I've found myself depending too much on autofocus since using the Q2, and the results have left me kind of disappointed. When shooting events, there are lots of evolving factors. Fog, lighting, crowds, multiple subjects seem to confuse the camera even when using spot focus. I would suggest using autofocus with intentionality. Know what you're shooting and why, and if you can clearly see that there are outside factors that are going to get in the way, just switch to manual focus. You'll thank yourself later. And a little more on the nitpicky side, I don't prefer the shape and depth of the viewfinder. It's shallow enough that when I'm running gunning, I find myself smudging the glass, and that affects my ability to shoot. In fact, it smudges my actual glasses as well. That's kind of an unavoidable problem, but it's still something to consider when buying a camera. And finally, probably the most important con I want to talk about is the low-res LCD screen. I don't know why, but the images that come out of this camera are far greater than what you see on this LCD screen. You're constantly having to remind yourself that this is not what the image really looks like. So you have to trust yourself and trust in the process, kind of like shooting film. You know these images are going to be great. Follow your process and believe in yourself. Wait until you see them in Lightroom. It's just going to blow your mind. So finally, would I recommend the Leica Q2? If you're interested in street photography, it's in my opinion the most ideal camera for your arsenal. If your style leans more wide-angle lenses and you prefer lighter gear, it's also ideal. But if shooting studio work with strobes is more your speed, pun intended, I would recommend something more specialized. The Q2 is tailored more towards the on-the-go lifestyle photographer who wants a dependable workhorse in a light package. That's it for this video. Thanks for watching. I'm Jordanknowmoore. If you like this video, please subscribe and check out my next video right here.